Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. Does that mean that, good morning, Lakeo, do as thou wilt is the whole of the law? Does that mean that you should just do whatever the hell you want, whatever comes to your mind? Well, if that's the way, peace, C. Ray, peace, Erica, peace, Ethertainment, I think. Right on. Thanks for stopping for joining the channel, subscribing. Peace, brothers, sister Zeta. How's everybody doing? Damn, y'all up on here quick. Appreciate y'all. That's what's up. Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. Actually, Sister Zeta is the one who prompted this because we were joking through text. What's up, Marcus? And one, that's a famous quote from Aleister Crowley, a chaos magician of the late 19th century, early to mid 20th century. Now, I am not I haven't extensively read his works. I got his book 777. I have his Book of Thoth. I might have something else of his, but I have a lot of some other outgrowths from him. What's the guy? Peter Carroll. Some of his stuff. But one thing about Aleister Crowley is he was, of course, crazy as hell, but he intentionally wrote in riddles, understanding that the vast majority of the population will be sidetracked by certain language. Okay, my signal might drop out here for about 30 seconds. If it does, now see that's what Sister Zeta said. That's George Bush's great grandfather. I never heard that. Now that is interesting, but it's funny because no, she said that was Barbara Bush's. Didn't you say that was Barbara Bush's daddy, Sister Zeta? Either way, it would make sense. I when she croaked, I captured. I remembered an episode or in her an appearance she made on the Today Show, where her granddaughter, one of them drunks, I think it was Jenna, the one who appears on the Today Show. She was kind of talking shit about her, and they brought Barbara Bush on there, and Barbara Bush was dressed in a witch's hat, the conical, stereotypical witch's hat. And the look on the granddaughter's face, that girl was shook, because Barbara Bush was saying something to the effect about, you were talking shit about me, something of that nature. And the girl, oh, grandma, no, but that's interesting. I want to look into that. But where the hell was I? That whole so Crowley intentionally wrote in riddles, understanding that the vast majority of the population is really illiterate. So I want to explain what I mean by illiterate. Now, of course, we would say in American society, one of the things that we hold high is our literacy rates. This is an advanced civilization where most of the population can read. That's a given, But we have to ask the question, what is literacy? Now, see, it's just like for those of us who were involved in whatever religion, we've been involved in, if you just read the scriptures and memorize them, or read the surahs and memorize them, that's called rote, R-O-T-E learning. That means you memorize it, you're a good automaton, basically. But that does not mean that you understand them. Being able to recite the words off the top of your head does not mean that you really understand what is being said. So to have true literacy, you must have the ability to comprehend. Thus, most of our population is illiterate. They may be able to call words, but they are not able to understand the words. Not able to understand because a great majority have not developed a desire to even understand those words. It's not like it's some great, gift. It's just wanting to know. So Crowley knew that very well. So he would write things that the average person is going to see and going to be turned off immediately by a misunderstanding of language. Myself being one when I first came across that. When the internet really started to take off, it was really just becoming, I say 2005, 2004, when it was just really, and then when YouTube came about, what was that, maybe 2007, 2008 roughly, and then you start having those Illuminati videos, and they show Aleister Crowley, the picture with him like that, the most evil man in the world, and do as thou wilt, and Jay-Z is a Satanist, and and I'm thinking, yeah, that's some crazy stuff right there, talking about do as thou wilt. That sounds like some satanic stuff. Before I even understood, well, what does the word Satan mean? What does the concept mean? And started investigating that. I was thrown off just by that. So I want to give you just a little quick code break. No, let me say this. No breakdown of any concept is singular. So you might have 100 different variations of, oh, well, this is what it means. This is what it means. Now, see, the trap is that one interpretation, or a person who interprets something one way might come on and say, oh, no, that ain't it. It's just, let me tell you something real quick. So I put up this, there was a video went up of Bobby Hemmett talking about the war between the gods. And I put up a comment just expressing that, well, we have to take into account that every time you hear a Bobby Hemmett tape, you're hearing a version of Bobby Hemmett. So a lot of people will see something of 1996, 97, 98. They hear that version of Bobby Hemmett and they get locked into that paradigm. He always said, don't follow me. And some people might hear the 1995 version of him, the more calm version. And some might hear after 2001. What I tried to say was, you have to take into account his full body of work when you listen to his lectures, because he was changing in different eras, it was always sincere. He was literally changing, which you have to question certain people who in 2018, you're saying the same shit you were saying in 2000. You haven't grown, you haven't expanded. You shouldn't even be on the same tip that you were on in 2015. You're supposed to be expanding. But either way, I tried to express that. And a brother puts a comment and said, what y'all don't understand is, basically the gist of what I said was, what Bobby Hemmett came to figure out later on, before he had the stroke, because he said it in a damn lecture. He said the war between the gods, basically it's settled, that there's peace between. And I said what he had come to grips with was that it was all him. Not saying that all the conspiracy things were not real. No, the shit's very real. But I'm talking about when you rise up to a certain level of understanding you get to a point where you realize the great war in heaven is the war in me, and I can bring the peace between the gods. And that's what he was expressing that in essence. So I kind of said that in not so many words, but a guy comes on and puts a comment, what y'all don't understand is that there's multiple deities. I said, okay, brother, great. Well, explain to me what that means. Crickets. Motherfucker has no response. See, and that's what I mean by some people are just eager to be right. So if I had come back really challenging him with something slick like, nah, nigga, you don't know what the fuck you talking about. I've been studying this shit. He would have had a response because it would have given him the resistance he needed to argue. But basically, in essence, I said, well, great. Thanks. Won't you enlighten us on what that means? Nothing. So I say that to say that even what I'm going to say about my little interpretation of Crowley here, and that do as thy wilt is the whole of the law, it is not to say that anything that I suggest is definitive. But anything that I say, I can back that shit up with some type of logical and spiritual mechanisms that I use to arrive at that conclusion. That's called the scientific method. Basically, you got a reason for how you came to this conclusion. That's all it means. Don't mean that this is the gospel. So this is real quick. I had to give that disclaimer. Language, one of the ways to hide language or the meaning is to flip around words. And it's not always done intentionally. That's where the spiritual component comes in, so that things could survive and be housed in an incubator to be later discovered. Certain things were hidden inside of packages that will allow them to travel throughout millennia. All right. Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. Now let's just use some critical thinking here. Moses went up on a mountain called Sinai. The root of the word Sinai is S-I-N, sin. He came down off the mountain. That goes your whole world full of sin. Then you get, so if you're really thinking, now you got a question, well, what does sin really mean? If the law came off of a mountain called Sinai, he comes down with the law. Now, Crowley says, do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. And the other day, I just was sitting and I was thinking again about, you know, the distraction machine of Donald J. Trump, and how he speaks on the top layer for distraction, but underneath it's coded. This whole thing about the wall. And I looked at it and it just hit me. I said, well, damn. Wall is an anagram for the word law. Damn, motherfucker. For the word law. So law, L-A-W, turn it around, it's wall. So let's put that into Crowley's statement. Do as thou wilt is the whole of the wall. Brow smart. To the right side. Do as thou wilt is the whole of the wall. All right. Moses went up on Mount Sinai and he brought down the wall. Let's just turn it around now. Instead of he brought down the law, he brought down the wall. Wall is an all-encompassing symbol just in itself. Let's just say that see, there's some things about Aleister Crowley that he revealed. That's why certain books of his will cost you $1,000 and upwards to get a hold of. That you can find some PDF copies, but to get a hard copy book of like that, I think it's Liber 51, where he talks about Atlantis. That book, to get a hard copy, this was like a year ago, was starting at like $500. So I can imagine it's probably minimum $600 or $700. It might be $1,000 now, starting off. But he mentions in there about Atlantis. The true meaning of Atlantis is a black womb, pointing back to a black woman. And if you get William Henry's books, which one is that? I made it to the mechanic. I gotta hurry up. Damn, it might be Blue Apples, or it might be Atomic Christ. He talks about the Atlantis. That root ATL is an anagram for TLA, which is Tula. And Tula comes back to like tulip, flower. So basically, we got some feminine correlation between Atlantis and the rest of the shit. So what I'm trying to say is, if we flip law for wall, and Moses came down off of the mountain and brought the wall down. Now just look at all the components. Mountain refers to mind. Okay? So if he brought down the wall, then that means this is a whole story about a form of enlightenment or a breakthrough in consciousness. You go to Proverbs chapter 9, verse 1. And this is a connection between what Crowley said about Atlantis being feminine, being this black goddess, and the whole concept of Moses going on Sinai. Sinai coincides with a feminine principle. And he brought down the wall. He had a breakthrough. So when Trump comes and says, we need to build a wall, then you reverse that. We need to build a law. Does this shit sound crazy? Does it sound like it ain't making sense? We're talking about playing with language. We need to build a law, and the wall represents being the symbol of the law to stop this shit and contain it. The wall is also the womb, the walls of the vagina. Tearing down the walls is penetration. Penetration into the vaginal passageway. Now think about what I said the other day. We've been talking about Kanye West, Generation X. If Generation X is the feminine principle, the X chromosome, and Generation X is supposed to give birth to Y, Generation Y as in masculine, in this particular case, then that is supposed to pierce the womb that's created by Generation X, creating resistance. What's up, Candace? Creating resistance. The resistance created between Generation Y and Generation X is supposed to give birth to Generation Z. Now, I told you about all these talks connect to each other. I told you about, in numerology, the 1 gives birth to the resistance, which is the 2. Uh, that's right. Bring down that wall. We talked about that in class. Bring down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev. 1987, Ronald Reagan. So the 1 and the 2 create a resistance. Therefore, the 3 is the affinity or the Christ that comes out of the resistance between the two opposing forces. So to contain that, we need to make sure that the wall stays around it, because just as there's penetration going in that creates the resistance that leads to this offspring, there has to be penetration coming out. What's up, Brother Williams? There has to be penetration coming out. What would be the penetration coming out? It would be birth, Generation Z. Does this shit make sense? The more you keep looking at stuff, it's like so many layers and layers and layers and layers. It's just some mind-boggling shit. And sometimes these things are just to document sometimes just my thoughts, so I don't go crazy. It's like, man, wow. So do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. Get you some. There's a guy out of New York named Lord Strahan, Lakeo. Get some of his stuff, and King Simon does also a lot of work with numerology. Get some of their books. But if we want to take all this and bring it home, I like to try to bring it home and say, how can I use it in my everyday life? And then I got to wrap this up with this. If do as thou wilt is the whole of the law, which is the wall, and the wall is talking about a form of consciousness, a breakthrough in consciousness, which is then a breakthrough in understanding. Okay? And keep in mind, I broke a code for everybody about the 5 books of Moses. Moses brought down the law, which is the 5 books, right? All right. The 5 books is what is called the Torah. Well, guess what the Torah is? It's the Torah. And guess what the Torah is? Rota, a wheel. So he brought down a wheel, which is the law, but the 5 books is Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Leviticus. You take those and they form an anagram, which is knowledge. N, Numbers, L, Leviticus, D, Deuteronomy, G, Genesis, E, Exodus. 5 books. Knowledge, wisdom. So the whole thing is about wisdom, and wisdom is connected to being something feminine because we see it in Proverbs 9:1. All right. How does this apply? Can I make this simple and not abstract philosophical banter, Brother Jamal? Well, in your everyday life, you are confronted with triumphs and failures. Your triumph, let's say that's the number 1. Here go you some numerology, Lakeo. Simple understanding. Your triumphs are number 1s. Your setbacks are number 2s. Your ability to sit in the middle of a triumph and a failure is what creates the affinity, the number 3. What rises out of, and why you have to have come-ups and setbacks, is because they give you a variance mechanism to look at 2 different forces, and in seeing the opposition of those 2 forces, you see your ability to magnify who you are and magnify your own power. If all your power is going up, everything's just great, everything's popping. Touch it, it turns to gold. Look at it, shit unfolds. You know, if I want it, I can hold it. All of that. Well, it becomes mundane when it's your everyday reality. Conversely, when every day is a fucking failure, you know, uh, nothing ever works. You know, struggle is my reality. Well, that becomes equally as mundane and detrimental. It becomes stagnant. So in the resistance between the one and the two, this vortex is formed, which is Christ, which is understanding. And then as you take that understanding, you're able to go and create the fourth piece. Everything is Yod He Vahe. Yod He Vahe. Yod 1, He 2, Va 3, He 4. But that's got to be the initial resistance to get to the Va. And then the Va then creates the completion of a cycle. It leads to the completion of a cycle. And the completion of a cycle does what? It starts out another cycle. If after you get over the initial shock or whatever messed up circumstance you're in, and can step back, and this is one thing Phil Valentine speaks on, and it's very powerful, the ability to objectify yourself and step outside of the situation. You then become the affinity when you can step out of it. When you're in a conflict with somebody and you can step outside of the situation and you become an observer of what your position is and what theirs is, then you have the advantage now of being in the bird's eye position, and thus you can overcome it and move on. I know what I'm talking about. I've been through a divorce. You know, prime example of, you know, my side, her side, and, you know, and it's just, man, you spend years and years and years of, till you just step back, man, you're like, well, this shit ain't working for me. You know, as long as I'm able to provide resistance, you know, then some folk, that's all they want is just to keep the resistance going, because it maintains a vortex. But to move beyond that, I got to step outside of it, and I got to become the number 3. I can't be the number 2. I can't remain the number 1. I got to become a 3. And this is also Kabbalah. This is why the unknowable cannot be contained in Kether. Kether had to spill into 2, you know, which is Hokmah. Hokmah had to spill into Bina, and so forth, because it was too much power to contain in one digit, in one spot, in one degree of consciousness. Well, all right, so I gotta wrap this up. You know, as always, I appreciate y'all. What they used to say at church. Y'all showed up and showed out. Oh man, some of the shit we say, and then just repeat it. Y'all showed up and showed out today. Thank you, Lakeo. For my members on the website, I'm excited. I got some master classes coming. I'm gonna be interviewing some folk. Inshallah, I'm gonna be interviewing Dr. Eileen, you know, for one of my master classes. I'm gonna let y'all meet my mama. She's gonna be on for a master class, you know. So just exciting stuff coming. I always appreciate all of y'all. Remember, this is Brother Jamal with mastersofthecosmos.com, reminding you to stay down until you get up, and when you get up, stay down. Peace.